Oh, hey, Chris.
Hey Chuck, how are you?
I'm really good because I'm excited.
I'm excited. We're recording a pod midweek at the end of the workday. We've got a guest joining us to discuss a topic pertinent to everybody.
Yes, we do. Dr. Jason Strelzow is here, and we can talk about his medical expertise and his background, which we will. But he is, at least in my humble opinion, an AI savant. Now, my bar may be lower than some, but he blows me away with his knowledge. So we are really fortunate to have Jason as a guest.
Welcome, Jason.
Thanks for having me. That's a hard act to follow after you put that bar up there, Chuck. But appreciate being able to talk to you guys.
You are gonna jump so far over that bar. I am not worried. But on a medical note, we it's been unbelievable since you joined our practice, not even 18 months ago, I think.
Yeah,
Um, you and your wife Kelly Hines, who both bring something to the AI and informatics world, which is, as we have discussed, really becoming all our world. Your background in hand surgery, obviously you joined the hand division, but also trauma surgery and your myriad societal involvements really elevate everything we do in the department. So we're excited you're here, but we're really excited you're here tonight.
appreciate it.
It's not often you call somebody a savant. I don't know. Would you consider yourself a congenital savant, Chuck, or is that? I mean, that bar is real
I
high.
I don't even know
Yeah.
what that word means. I just thought it would sound good there.
So
You're,
we'll talk with Jason about kind of general overview of AI, which I'm still learning a lot about. I'm very far behind, especially the resident on service with me is very far ahead of me. So I learn from her on a regular basis. But then we'll also talk about some kind of day-to-day applications, as well as some use in the field and practice of medicine, hand surgery, hand therapy.
Perfect.
Sounds
So
great.
so on a very basic level, when someone says AI, Jason, what does that mean to you? And how do you think about the field without going too deep, but maybe not too superficial either?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think when most people talk about AI, they're really talking about some version of an LLM or ChatGPT. That sort of becomes synonymous. Those two terms, depending on who you're speaking with, don't necessarily equate to each other, but certainly some form of intelligence you can communicate with. I think that's what most people kind of have synonymized with, and a process where a computer will answer questions for you and potentially do something for you based on the inputs that and the conversation, the prompts you have with it.
So when you
Um,
say LLM, what does that mean?
yeah, large language model, great question because I think people have some confusion about that too. So, a large language model is effectively a mathematical model that's learned our language. It's learned how to interpret what we ask of it and what we talk and how we talk with it. And in the simplest way, provides a predictive model for an answer that we're looking for. So it takes terms we put into it, it puts them into mathematical models, prediction models. It's effectively like a fancy prediction machine. And through education and teaching and the language that we teach it, it comes out with answers.
So if I were to search for something, say if I typed in treatment of carpal tunnel syndrome into Google, do I also type the same thing into ChatGPT or whatever AI LLM that I'm using, or do I have to search differently? And what are the differences in what I'm going to see?
Yeah, great question. So a search, the traditional Google, because now Google has AI built into it. So let's go back a few years before Google started to implement some Gemini into its search bar. When you put carpal tunnel in, it really looked and searched the internet for either those words specifically, so carpal tunnel, or it looked for them individually. So you get carpal, you get tunnel, and based on the algorithm that it had, it would give you whatever it could find based on a search algorithm. Google's fancy search algorithm was a trade secret for a long time, and the way that it optimized what it found was how often other pages were being meta crawled, or there was basically a search inside of a search, and high hit websites would be the first thing on your Google search. If you do the same thing in let's say ChatGPT, for instance, ChatGPT doesn't know what you're asking it unless you ask specific what we call prompts. So if you say treatment of carpal tunnel, it will do its best to try and understand and answer your question. It doesn't necessarily answer a specific question if you ask just treatments of carpal tunnel. It'll just list them potentially. Now, as the systems and the AI tools you use get better, they can sometimes infer what you're trying to ask it. And that's where some of the issues come up for people. And we'll probably talk about prompting in a second, but effectively, what you put into it and the more specific you are, the more specific it'll predict an answer for you.
Perfect, perfect. Well, we might as well talk about prompts now. There's obviously a million different directions we can go.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people emphasize how critical construction of the right prompt is to leverage the chatbots to give you useful information. And so, as you just said, treatment for carpal tunnel is not really a great question, and it's not personalized to me. And unless the chatbot and I have gone round and round over years, maybe it doesn't give me the answer I want. So how do you think about how do you construct the most useful prompt possible?
Yeah, great question. So the evolution of this whole topic is advancing so rapidly now that I think even the prompting question has become kind of like the Googling question, where we don't even have to have a good prompt anymore to get a pretty reasonable answer. And so things like Claude Cowork, other Perplexity, and a bunch of other options out there are starting to learn how humans ask questions, and the algorithms that they're building are learning how we ask questions and actually not requiring such a good prompt. But to go back to your question, you have to think when you're asking any or interacting with any of these chatbots, which is just one version of AI, you need to give it the context, the content, and provide it with the voice and all of the elements to sort of narrow down your answer, your specific answer. And so typically the easiest thing to do is imagine you're talking to a toddler, provide it with concrete, very specific examples of what you're looking for and directions, and it'll give you a much better answer. And so, one of the ways of thinking about that is context. So you give it, hey, you are a orthopedic researcher. So that's the context. The content. I need evidence-based treatments for carpal tunnel broken down by, and you can list, by surgical and non-surgical, provided to me in the tone of a specialized orthopedic surgeon who only deals with hand surgery. And that will give you a much better answer than if you simply just wrote treatments for carpal tunnel.
So love that. And before we dive into
Now, I don't, so I'm a very basic entry level person using it. So, is there a difference between the AI that I could, if I just go to ChatGPT and don't log in and don't pay, is there a difference between that version and if I subscribe and use one of the fancier services? And how good does it get?
Yeah, great question. The short answer is yes, there's huge difference. The longer answer is, um, these companies obviously have to pay for the data that you're asking, right? They're paying for the electricity to run their data and server farms. They're paying to run each and every word that you put into ChatGPT or Claude or Microsoft. Each token, so that's pretty much a word, costs money. And so the way that they try and induce you to go and use their more expensive versions is to give you some additional features. And that can be personalization. It can be memory, which allows the system to get smarter or to learn your preferences over time. It also allows you to ask more complicated questions and do deeper dives into the available resources that it has.
beautiful. Before we do take a deeper dive into medical I have to ask this. You and I have talked a lot about this. So I think of sort of three or four big chatbots that most of us use. So ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and maybe you put Perplexity or Gronk or who knows what else you put in there. Tell me which one you're using today. Most commonly, I think you probably use more than one. And tell us which one you use today and why.
So I use Claude For most of my daily work, mostly because they've just been on the cutting edge of providing new innovative opportunities and services. So co-work was a huge change to their platform, which all the other companies are trying to catch up with. And for those that aren't familiar with co-work, it's effectively, as the name implies, having a coworker. And you can give them duties, you can give them access to files, and they can work autonomously, right? So that's sort of agent 1.0, for lack of a better word, that requires no coding experience. You can do lots inside of Claude. And the nice thing about Claude is if you want to go one level up, they also have the coding side of it. And so if you want to write your own code, you can. You can even get Cowork to help you write your own code. So suddenly there's this like meta universe, right, where the AI is writing AI code to help you do more. Um, and as we talked about, there's other things that I'll use various different models for. So for instance, Grok's actually pretty good for a few things, which despite all of the stuff that comes out about it, the negative press that comes out of it, it's actually quite a good model for a number of elements. ChatGPT I still use occasionally for some stuff, and certainly Perplexity for research is a game changer.
So, what's one way in which an AI novice could
Is that
jump in
you?
and
Are
make
you?
yeah, just asking for a friend. And what's the first thing that somebody should try to make their life easier with AI?
Oh, great question. Yeah, really good question. First thing, there's so many things.
I mean,
So
you're deep in, man. Like,
you know,
I still use Google. Like,
so here's a good
I
example.
still use PubMed. I went to look for something, and my resident, Carson, she's awesome. She's going to Open Evidence. I'm
Yes.
going to Google. I'm going to PubMed, excuse me. And we're typing in search terms, and literally, like, this is the difference between how I learn how to access information. I'm looking on PubMed. She's on Open Evidence.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a perfect example. So, if you want to use an interface, which is basically what open evidence is, right? It's an interface to a large language model, an AI model. That's a great one for everyday use for us. Now, what I would say is if you're not in the medical world or you don't want to use it for medical related things, try a simple task, which is next time you feel like Googling, put it in ChatGPT, Claude, your chatbot of choice and ask it instead of Google. And when you ask it to teach you something as well. So, if you have a question, let's say, I don't know, we'll think of something. What's the newest movie out in theaters this week? And then add to
Do
that.
you know the name of the movie you'd like to see? First AI.
and then and then ask it to like summarize the plot in 3 sentences, right? And that might be a great first use, right? It's sort of bridging between simple search and the power of AI, which is in a lot of ways, summarizing and contextualizing data for you.
Okay, before we dive further in, we do have to thank our first sponsor. The Upper Hand is sponsored by PracticeLink.com, the most widely used physician job search and career advancement resource.
Becoming a physician is hard. Finding the right job doesn't have to be. Join Practice Link for free today at www.practicelink.com/the upper hand. All right, we're back.
That's an area for AI as well.
No doubt. I am
Oh,
sure Practice Link is either involved
should be.
or should be. That's exactly right. Yeah, so like when many of us who are less sophisticated think about AI, we do treat it like Google. And while there's nothing wrong with that, it does miss much of the boat in the sense of asking it to help us do things, write letters, whatever. There's so much more power that most of us don't appreciate. So it is a time investment to help understand those things. But talk to us about a couple of things. We talked about open evidence. Obviously, that has medical application. Reportedly, over 50% of physicians in the United States are using open evidence. That's incredible. How quickly and widely it has become adopted in the United States. Remarkable numbers. The other obvious one, and I have some interesting data that I'll share, but are ambient listening tools. So, Jason, tell us what you think about those, how long you've been using them, Game changer for you? Not a game changer for you?
Yeah, you know, it's a fascinating world because if you look at the investment in something like ambient listening in the US, there's it's somewhere above a $1.5 billion has been invested in ambient listening or that related technology in the US in the last year. Have I used it? Absolutely. Do I find it game changing? 100%. It's a fascinating world because it does something autonomously that is a rote chore that we have to do, right? Dictate or document in the medical record. And it does it in a way that's unobtrusive and works in parallel. And then there's a feedback loop, right? One of the sort of hot topics in medical AI is doctor in the loop or physician in the loop, in such that we check its output, right? At the end of the day, after I've, seen 55 people in clinic, I can sit down, I go through the notes, and I just make sure that the data is there. And that's a wonderful tool, I think, that can help us. There's some interesting other things, and I'll let you, if you've got data. I just recently read a really controversial topic on this ambient listening, and would be interested in your opinion. But let's hear the data first, and then we'll go.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would say I've been in medicine a little longer than you two, a lot longer
Come
than
on.
Chris, or at least he wants us to think a lot longer, even though clearly he's lost the message on AI. But anyways, there is nothing that has been as big a game changer for me as the ambient listening choice for clinic. It's a game changer, like indescribably so. What was
Yeah.
interesting is for WashU, now I've done several trials, so I've been using it for a couple of years. But it recently has become available to everyone who wants it. And right now the uptake is 15%. 15% of our notes are dictated with ambient AI. The department that's leading the school is orthopedics at 30%. But apparently, typically, it doesn't get much higher than 30% uptake, which is
Hmm.
crazy to me. And I preach to my partners like this will change your life. I don't go home with notes undictated anymore. And my notes are pretty good. So, Chris, is it changing your life?
Yes, I use it. I like it. I don't love it. I will not go back. Um, I was actually just talking about this the other day in the OR. It just sometimes it generates really great notes, very thoughtful assessments and plans. Sometimes it misses the forest from the trees. And again, of course, it's on us to review it and fix it or edit it to our preferences. But it's not what my notes used to be. And not that my notes were great; they were just laid out in the way that I like. And I wish there was, and there probably is, and I just have not availed myself to it. I wish there was a way to personalize it so I could show them a bunch of my old notes for similar problems and teach it. I call her Allie, and teach Allie how to write notes in the way that I would like it to write notes.
You bring up a good point, and that is the future of this technology. There are ambient listening tools that will allow you to do that. The one we currently use doesn't. Um, but what you can say to it is these are the things that I need you to always record. If someone says this, it needs to go in the note. If I say this, it needs to go in the note. And that goes back to sort of ways we can use Claude or other tools better, which is there are opportunities for you to load up context files. And these context files basically give instructions to the AI, or the tool that you're using, about your preferences for, how you want these records to be made. And so that will be in the future. I totally agree with you. The early ones were really clunky. They're getting better. The current one we use, it doesn't have that ability, but I hope, because I've been sending them messages on a weekly basis, that they will let us do that as part of this opportunity.
I liken the notes that are generated to, I mean, this is no shade to medical students, but like an okay medical student note. I still find that our residents, by and large, tend to write better notes than Allie, but abridged, I guess is the technical term. And I think that this, I don't know how you guys do it, but I still ask our residents and fellows to dictate notes because I think it's better, to be honest with you. It's easier for me to edit. And then it allows them, it gives them a skill to work on. I mean, they have to know how to do this because if they're in a practice that doesn't pay for it, and if the uptake is only 15 to 30% at some, for medicine overall, if it peaks there, they're probably going to be writing their own notes. And so I still ask them to write their own notes. I know that some of my partners do not. And I don't
Yeah,
know whether you guys do.
no, I never did. And shame on me. Maybe that's one thing I certainly have never elevated a resident by kind of helping them understand how to be efficient with notes in clinic. I don't think they're ever going to have to write notes. If you take an intern, I think there's zero chance an intern gets out in the real world and ever writes a note. I think it's to be like Chris, you using a stethoscope is never going to happen.
I did use one recently, by the way, but I just taught my daughter how to write a check. So, you never know when these skills are. I'll teach them how to address envelopes because one day the whole system might break down.
True, good
This is
planning.
fair. This is fair. It's a good backup plan, I think,
Churning
when
our own
the
butter at the same time too. Yeah.
Dr. Strelzo,
yes.
what else do you do with AI pertinent to medicine and pertinent to peons like Chris and I? You're doing high level stuff that we can't even understand, but give us some pearls or give us some, things that'll make us think and aspire, and I mean this very seriously, aspire to doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, great question. Everyone's workflow is different. I think, the big ones that make sense to me are automating things that you do on a regular basis. So, and things that are, I want to say laborious or just task oriented. So, a simple one that I think all of us end up doing is like CV management. Right. So, and we currently, at WashU, for instance, we require an updated CV once a year. A super easy way that you can just automate that process is if you build a small agent, it will update your CV with every publication that you have published on PubMed, right? Every presentation you give at a meeting, it'll crawl and find that stuff and put it in your CV, all formatted the way you want it. That's a super easy, low-hanging fruit. You don't even have to think about it. At the end of the year, your CV is updated at any time. A lot of other easy things, letter writing, if you're doing a lot of like form letters, I think it's really good for, particularly, in the promotion sphere, in the appointment sphere, where these letters are not necessarily having to be detailed oriented. They're just basically generic letters. I think where people get in trouble is if they rely on these tools and don't think through the elements of the tool to give them a meaningful letter, then that's not a great use of the time. But I think it can give you a really nice outline of a letter. It can take someone's CV if you want to feed it a CV, your own CV, and it can really help you there. Um, for like the research world, I think one of the areas this can be super helpful, if you look at any of the grant applications, a lot of that is just cut and paste, right? And a lot of it is cut and paste from multiple sources. And so you can have an AI where you say, look at the RO1 requirements. Here they are. Here are the amounts of information I can give you based off, a website, a document, a PDF you have, an AIMS document, and it'll just automatically do that for you. So I think those are really, really, really nice ways of automating things that no one wants to do, but we all have to do. Um, if you want to get outside of like the HIPAA related world, and so you have to be a little careful because your email is considered, HIPAA if you're talking about patients, et cetera. But, and that's where Copilot can be helpful, especially if you have an institutional HIPAA agreement where you can have it summarize emails from multiple people, give you updates if you have a meeting, and you can say, hey, I've got 5 minutes. Give me the summary. What are the agenda points? What do I have to know about the people I'm about to meet? That's a really nice way of using it because you can go into the meeting and say, oh, hey, Joe, I saw your last post on, LinkedIn really, hit it out of the park. And you can suddenly personalize that meeting without having to do hours and hours of prep time, which we all know is painful. And so I think that's really good. And then last but not least, for going back to the email thing, is prioritizing emails, things I haven't read, things I should read, things I have to get back to people in a timely fashion. That's where I've found it to be very helpful.
I was having lunch with a friend recently who does a lot of this in his work, and he was saying that, any application would be where somebody is analyzing data and applying judgment. And immediately my thoughts go to things like billing and coding, prior authorization,
Yes.
both sides of it, both on the insurance side and our side, peer-to-peer reviews that we have to do. At the end of the day, we're still the person responsible for the billing and coding. Claude is not going to jail for Medicare fraud. It's one of us if that were to happen. Where do we draw the line on, ethics and liability or culpability with use of AI for things like billing and coding? If you ask, a LLM to do a chart review and pulling out charts for research, where does that come in? Is it any different than having a medical student do it? Maybe it has some advantages. At the end of the day, you're still the PI and you're still responsible. Where are we currently right now with that kind of conversation about ethics and liability?
I think it's a super tricky spot. And I think there's multiple avenues there, right? Research, number one, you brought up, the medical student is pulling charts and drawing data and then potentially putting that data in LLMs to do the stats, right? Is a perfect example. Or where you have a paper factory, right? You put in data and you just say, write some papers off this, and those things are happening. This is real, right? There's a fascinating article about a scientist, a well published scientist who read a paper, quote unquote, that he authored and found out that he'd never written the paper. It was a completely made up fictional paper that had been referenced multiple times in the literature, right? These things are happening because of hallucinations. So the systems are not perfect. Many of them, particularly if you're not facile with how to use them, will will invent or try to satisfy the question that you've asked it. Right. And so, to your question of ethics, I think in the research realm, in the publication realm, we have not figured this out. And unfortunately, it's advancing so much faster than people are willing to sit down and sort of say, we need to make some rules here, that it's going to outstrip the publication in the research world before anyone knows what happened. It
Yeah, let me jump in. And Chris knows this, and obviously I know this, but our listeners don't. That Jason is the AI editor. I don't know if that's the right expression for Journal of Bone and Joint Surgery. So for those who aren't aware, that's our biggest journal, aside from the Journal of Orthopedic Research. But it is the most influential journal in orthopedics. And if I write a crappy paper, it's never getting into JBJS. So therefore, most of my work does not. But so, Jason, you are very attuned to this and working on this and thinking about this every day.
Yeah, I mean, we get submissions, and you sort of you cock your head at the writing style or the content or comments that are made in it. And the problem is, if you look at the AI detection tools, they're not very good, right? And so you suddenly are in this arms race that we can't figure out. And so I think that's one area that's critical. Chris, you brought up a really good point about billing, coding, et cetera. One of the elements, going back to the abridged conversation, so ambient listening, one of the things that's happening is people are now billing at a higher level. What happens with that? Because the pool of money is still the same. So if everyone's billing more and we're submitting more bills for this, where does that money come from to pay for the extra billing? And if you start to think about what's happening on the other side, is insurance companies and payers are starting to get wise to this. And now they're increasing denials using AI tools to say, oh, you didn't hit these required, elements for you to bill at this level. You didn't hit, or you didn't say this specific phrase in your chart, which previously may have been overlooked by a human. But AI is going to deny a lot faster than a human will. So now we've got increasing denials, increasing billing, and suddenly where are we? We're going to get squeezed in the middle. And I think policy has got to catch up. The policy and reimbursement stuff is a huge problem and an area that hasn't been solved.
Yeah, I mean, two big insurance companies, Aetna and Cigna, both are automatically downcoding level 4 and 5 E&M visits in the clinic, um, allegedly without fully reviewing the claims, and really give us very little recourse. And so it's tough. I mean, I get it. It's problematic on both sides. There are also examples of problematic AI guided CPT coding that have led to big financial issues. And so WashU is a large conservative institution that sometimes frustrates the heck out of me, but most of the time I appreciate that and it keeps us out of trouble. So we are getting into this more and more, but doing it in a very thoughtful, legally supported way, which I think is right, even though I'd love to be at the tip of the spear, as they say. That's not the place for us.
So I've got one question I want to ask, but first, I wanted to ask surgeons, did you know that Checkpoint Surgical has their monopolar nerve stimulator Guardian? But did you know they also have a bipolar nerve stimulator called Gemini?
With a bipolar stimulation probe, Gemini provides finely controlled stimulation, even at the fascicular level, whatever that means, and is an ideal stimulator for selective neurectomy for spasticity. Want to know more? I do. I'm going to visit checkpointsurgical.com.
Oh, you know what a fascicular level is, Chuck. Stop trying to pass it off like you're not a savant at this. So, Jason, I guess the question I had is I was talking about this today, and if we have a hard case, either you see somebody challenging in clinic, and this goes to the hand therapist too, or you're in the OR and you're not sure what to do, I'd pick up the phone and call Chuck. I'd pick up the phone and call you, or call Marty, or call a fellowship mentor, a residency mentor.
Chris, hey
Wendy
Chris,
to the
Chris,
level, yep.
Chris, we lost you for a sec. You said you'd pick
Oh,
up the phone and call.
okay. So I would pick up the phone and call you, Jason, or call Chuck, or call Marty, or Ryan, or any other mentor that I've had in the past, or a partner. Do you think we'll get to the point where using AI will be like to the level of talking to a trusted colleague in terms of either both just for, advice to helping you help the patient, but from a liability perspective? Will that be frowned upon? Will it be accepted? Where are we with that?
Yeah, good thought. I think, I think it's a tool, and like any tool, the liability ultimately stops with the person using the tool. And so, to your question of will I ever, intraoperatively or, in the clinic consult it? Absolutely. Will I ever defer to it? No. So I think, and that's the balance, right? I think where we're going to get to, most likely will be we're in the OR and it's an augmentation to our decision making. But ultimately, we make the call, we make the choice, we make the move, we make the cut. I think when we are getting into trouble, let's imagine you're confused by something, something's not going right, or you just need a second set of eyes. I think humans will likely always be that second set of eyes. But before you get there, you'll probably, call Claude, call Allie, whoever it is, to give you that extra little information. And if it's not enough, if that doesn't, sort of tweak something in your mind that makes you feel comfortable to go ahead, you'll call Chuck, you'll call Marty, you'll call someone else.
What's reassuring to me is that despite how unbelievable these chatbots are, I mean, just so much knowledge has gone into training them to help them answer our questions. They lack two things. They lack judgment, that we acquire with time and experiences, and they lack experience. I mean, it's sort of the same thing. And I guess eventually there'll be enough information that maybe they'll be close, but I mean that's what the corporate world's struggling with, right? So if they aren't hiring just out of college kids to work entry level jobs, which then allows those entry level jobs to become middle management and learn along the way, that's going to cause a problem. So it's been nice to see some of the big tech companies are now starting the hiring process again. It's a tricky balance.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. But I think as long as people remember that it's a tool and the tool is only as good as the user, um, and we keep using it as a tool, I think we'll be in good shape. I think it's when we decide that it can replace and completely uh, sort of pull off the human from the tool, then we're in trouble.
Chris, final
Thank you for
word.
joining us, Jason. What a great conversation, and look forward to learning more as this evolves.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Thank you.